I've been walking these streets for 25 years, pounding the pavements. I know what's going on in the back rooms. I know what's going on in the boardrooms. What's the Deal is the place where the purple people hang out. We're the only show on television that allows a Democrat, a Republican, and an independent to come down and talk it out. The #1 show on television that always focuses on crypto. We tell you what's the real deal.
The mayor is spending money like a drunken sailor.
We're in Miami for Bitcoin Week, the North American Bitcoin Conference. Welcome back. It's Newsmax TV's What's the Deal? Season 2, Episode 2. Last week, we sat down with Roger Stone, in my opinion, unfairly charged, maliciously prosecuted, the target for 5 process crimes. This week, we take our focus to New York City. In New York State and New York City, the Democrats control the Assembly. They control the New York State Senate. They control the New York City Council. And one of the New York City Council members who exists and persists in the minority is with me tonight. New York City Councilman Eric Ulrich joins me tonight on What's the Deal. Eric, what's the deal with the New York City Public Advocates race? You've worked hard. You've been a long-time advocate for Republicans and conservative ideals in the New York City Council. We're going to get to AOC and losing Amazon. What's the deal with ending one-party rule in New York City and you being the next public advocate?
Well, John, thanks for having me on the show.
Of course.
New York City is run by the left wing of the Democratic Party, the so-called progressives that are led by Bill de Blasio, who wants to drive out small businesses. He just chased Amazon out of the city of New York. And the one thing that the city could really benefit from right now would be to have a public advocate who would stand up for the middle class, who would stand up for small businesses, who would stand up for common sense. I'm running on this Common Sense Party platform because there are 17 candidates on the ballot, and 16 of them are a bunch of communists. They're all crazies. I'm the only one that has common sense. I'm the only one who's going to stand up to the mayor. The public advocate's job in the city of New York is to stand up to the mayor and to be a check on the mayor, not a rubber stamp. There are 16 other candidates who are on board with the mayor's so-called progressive agenda, and I am the antithesis of the mayor's so-called progressive agenda.
So let's just put this into perspective, Eric. New York City just passed a new initiative for 8-to-1 matching funds. So for every dollar a Democrat or a Republican or a nonpartisan candidate raises, the city gives you another $8 to run a race. The budget for the public advocate's office is about $3 million. There are 16 people, including you, in the race. Estimated spend about $25 million in campaign finance matching funds. So the taxpayers of New York City will pay $25 million to elect someone, hopefully you, for a $3 million budget. What does that say about the progressive agenda of New York that we would spend $25 million to elect someone to spend $3 million?
Well, I think when you look at the fact that the mayor has ballooned the budget up to $92 billion in the city of New York. When Bloomberg left office, for instance, the budget was $69 billion. We've ballooned almost $30 billion. The point is that the mayor is spending money like a drunken sailor, and this is just another example of the progressive movement and some of these so-called progressive ideas that sound very good on paper, and sometimes they actually do some good, but when you look at the amount of candidates that are in the race, it's really fiscally irresponsible that so many candidates are able to qualify for the matching funds and run their campaigns. Most of them have no shot to win whatsoever, but all the while they're spending the taxpayers' money. It's fiscally irresponsible.
When you say drunken sailor, there's been, many stories around about Bill de Blasio using marijuana, and New York is a medical state, but not a recreational state. I don't know that Bill de Blasio has any medical reason, but do you think he's spending money like a stone sailor or just a drunken sailor?
The fact that you bring that up might explain why he thinks he can be president. He's spending more time in Iowa, New Hampshire. He's spending more time outside of the city of New York than he is inside of the city of New York, tending to the day-to-day problems that we have in the city. So that might explain why the mayor why the mayor thinks he could be president. Clearly, the people of New York know that he's not been a very good mayor. he would never make a good president. And if that's what's helping him ease the pain, I don't know what to tell you.
Eric, I've known you for a while. I know that you've been committed to Republican causes. This is a nonpartisan special election, so you're going to be on the ballot on the common sense line. And the common sense is, if there's 16 Democrats, maybe go for the one Republican who's not on the same team as the mayor. And I applaud you for finding a name for your party that people will identify with. But what I think, when I talk about you, when I tell my friends, hey, if you want somebody that's going to check the mayor, if you want somebody who's going to stand up and kick ass when we need some asses kicked, you want to go for Eric Ulrich. And they go, well, I don't know him. And I say, well, he's the only Republican in the race. I know you can't advertise yourself as the Republican, but you are a registered Republican and you've held Republican ideals your whole life in New York City. Tell our audience why you will bring Republican ideals to check the mayor.
Well, I think in a time like this, John, when the mayor is spending more time outside of the city of New York because he thinks he's going to be the next president, we know he's completely delusional with respect to that, that if there ever was a time that common sense was needed, someone who supported school choice, someone who supported tax relief for the middle class, someone who supported the business community, someone who supported our men and women in law enforcement, and we just lost another police officer last week, may he rest in peace. Now is that time. These are the ideals that turned New York City around. That was the renaissance that contributed to the turnaround in this city that started under Giuliani, continued under Michael Bloomberg, and has been completely flushed down the toilet by Bill de Blasio. If we had a counterbalance in a city like New York, if we were able to elect a Republican, albeit in a nonpartisan special election on Tuesday, imagine what message that would send to the rest of the country that, hey, New York City just elected a Republican to a citywide position. Imagine where else we can win in the other states, in the other counties, and in the other cities. We can inspire, I believe, the comeback of the Republican Party in other urban places and suburban communities that perhaps didn't do so well in the last election cycle. And I think it starts right here in New York City on Tuesday.
Donald Trump made this message, hey, you've been part of the Democratic Party all these years. They only come out every 4 years and tell you run down to the election booth and vote for us again. Are you kind of trying to pick up a message of why not us? Like, why not give it another chance? Like, New York State is Assembly, Democrats, Senate, Democrats, New York City Council, Democrats, Mayor, Democrat, Governor, Democrat. It's one party rule. And if we're a real democracy, don't we need a guy like you to be the one who breaks that one party rule?
I think that our democracy only thrives when we have a strong and viable two-party system, when we're keeping each other honest. That's what the checks and balances is for. In New York State, as you just described, in New York City, it is dominated by the ultra-left-wing faction of the Democratic Party, the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes of the world, who are dictating economics. I don't know where she gets it from, but the point is that the party's been hijacked by the left wing, the Democratic Party. And as a result, I think that the public and the people are looking to us, to Republicans, to say, why can't we just have someone with common sense to balance the scales, to balance the spreadsheets, and to make sure that we can have a city that's livable for all New Yorkers? And if we could do that in New York, we could do it anywhere in the country.
You're hearing from the people. You know what's bothering people. You know what people want. I want to do a quick lightning round, and you give me 2 sentences on each borough. What do you think the public advocate needs to do to help people in the Bronx?
Empower the communities and help small businesses there.
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn is improve public transportation.
Manhattan.
Manhattan is to give a voice for the forgotten New Yorkers, the tenants and the people who, the new New Yorkers, the people that have just moved to New York, that are looking for a voice to fight for them as well.
Your homeland, Queens.
Queens, I think, is looking for the respect and the attention that they deserve. We are the other forgotten borough.
And my forgotten borough, Staten Island, what do you think you can do or help do for Staten Island?
I think Staten Island needs all the help that it can get, especially under this administration. If there's a map of the city of New York, the legend for that map is over the borough of Staten Island, because Bill de Blasio just doesn't give a damn about Staten Islanders, and that is the one thing that I hear every time that I go there. People say, give this mayor hell, hold his feet to the fire, Eric, we're counting on you.
He's the one Republican out there still fighting for you. And when the city and the state puts a system out there where they'll spend $25 million to elect a $3 million position, this is our guy who wants to be out there fighting for you in the 5 boroughs in all of New York City and breaking that one-party rule. Eric, I want to thank you for giving us a few minutes in a one-on-one.
Thank you.
You're watching What's the Deal? We're coming back right after this with nationally syndicated radio host Kevin McCullough from AM 970, heard right here in New York. And we're going to talk about AOC, and we're going to talk about all the things that these socialists are doing to New York City. We'll be back right after this. You're watching What's the Deal on Newsmax TV. Hey, welcome back. On the top of the news this week, Senate and Assembly Democrats in New York are cheering for infanticide, where they have allowed late-term abortions. And Democrats across New York are howling in joy, along with Governor Mario Cuomo, for killing babies post-birth. On top of that, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has introduced the new Green Deal, and everyone is jumping aboard with the new Green Deal. Last but not least, New York City has lost 25,000 potential jobs from Amazon to come to Long Island City because of opposition from AOC and socialist Democrats. Joining us again is New York City Councilman who's right in the middle of this, Eric Ulrich. Eric Ulrich is a Republican who's also the candidate for New York City Public Advocate on the Common Sense line. And he's the guy we're hoping can end one-party rule here in New York City. And then the man who gets on the radio every single day and talks to the nation, nationally syndicated radio host Kevin McCullough is with us from AM 970 in New York. Kevin, Eric, thank you guys for joining me. Eric, I want to ask you first. Amazon, they found that New York was a place they wanted to be. They estimated about 25,000 jobs. There was $3 billion in tax incentives. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says, let's take that $3 billion and give it to people, not knowing that we don't have this money. Eric, why did Ocasio-Cortez, in the interest of organizing, destroy 25,000 jobs in New York City?
It's absolutely despicable what happened last week in New York City. The fact that we lost 25,000 good-paying jobs, by the way. Any other city would have rolled out the red carpet for a company like Amazon to create billions of dollars in tax revenue and 25,000 good-paying jobs. New York is the only place, perhaps, in the country where we would look the gift horse in the mouth and kick it in the teeth. It makes no sense whatsoever. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, some of the other electeds, and a small but vocal minority of people who aren't even from the community, in some instances, basically chased Amazon out of New York City. And we are now going to give those jobs to New Jersey or Connecticut or to some other state nearby where Amazon will face a much friendlier media, a much friendlier government, and a much friendlier business climate than New York has. Imagine the message that this sends to other big companies that are thinking of investing in our communities and our city. What I think happened with Amazon in New York City, it should never happen again. It was downright disgraceful.
Ocasio-Cortez said it shows people can still organize. And Kevin, you talk to people across the whole country every single day of the week. What does it mean when a government who overtaxes its citizens needs to give $3 billion in tax breaks to a company, and then all of a sudden the Democrats turn around and chase that company away? What are your viewers, what are your listeners saying?
Yeah, well, I know that from a conservative perspective, there's a lot of reasons why the deal constructed with Amazon may not have been to everyone's liking. But in New York, you've got an interesting dilemma that you don't really have in a lot of other places, and that is you have been shedding jobs and opportunities faster than you can create them for too many years. Meantime, Texas and Florida keep taking companies away from California and New York and high tax states, and they keep relocating them down in their locations that don't have any state income tax, and they don't have much of any corporate taxes that they're sticking on these companies. So how do you begin to reconstruct New York? The idea that Ocasio-Cortez and anybody else that opposed this on the sheer merit that other projects were going to get defunded because of it is total lunacy. You don't have the $3 billion sitting in the bank to do anything with, and you'll never get it now because you chased the only mechanism that it could bring it to you away.
It's not just the 25,000 jobs that Amazon was going to create. By the way, good paying jobs with a median salary of $150,000 a year. I don't know any welfare program or government incentive that could lift someone out of poverty better than a job that actually pays $150,000 a year. Aside from that, there were over 3,000 union construction jobs. Amazon signed a project labor agreement. They were going to have, union carpenters and plumbers and steam fitters and bricklayers and electricians actually build the facility. The best part, and probably the most ironic part of what we just discussed, is that Alexandria Ocasio had so much to say about the Amazon deal. It wasn't even in her district.
But what does it tell you about the power of Kristen Gillibrand and Chuck Schumer and Carolyn Maloney and Andrew Cuomo and Bill de Blasio, that this millennial congresswoman who has no experience doing anything can blow to hell the only jobs deal that New York has seen in a decade? It says that the power of the New York delegation and caucus is almost useless because they can't even bring jobs to their own district.
I mean, I think it's good for democracy that someone can come out of nowhere and beat an incumbent. That doesn't happen often. But the learning curve where her idea for the Green New Deal is now being adopted by almost every presidential candidate. Yeah. And they're talking about the elimination of airplanes. They're talking about the elimination of trains. Is her organization to kill Amazon a sign of things to come?
Absolutely.
That we want to take our country backwards.
Well, here's the thing. You mentioned someone that beat incumbents that didn't have any experience. A man by the name of Donald Trump did the same thing. But the big difference between Trump and Ocasio-Cortez, apart from age and gender, is the fact that he's actually accomplished things. Her Green New Deal is the equivalent of some sort of high school thesis of Pollyanna utopia that no one, even in her own party, really thinks will work. But because they are so afraid of her social media presence and her power to draw media to her, that they're afraid to disagree with her.
I don't think she represents even New York Democratic values. I do believe that she embraces socialist ideas, that she runs on a socialist platform. I think it's that the party itself, the Democratic Party in big cities like New York, has been in fact taken over by the socialist left wing of the Democratic Party. It's very problematic. It's bad for democracy.
Over the years, the one place where there was like sanctity from heavy-duty politics was late-night television. And I reference a clip from Johnny Carson. And Johnny Carson said in an interview about 20 years ago, he said, getting into the big ideas, like the big news, the politics, and really weighing in, it's not my job. All of the late-night supposed comics are now really another wing of the Democratic Party. Is the media gone too far by even going to the late night and just making everything about Trump?
Well, I don't think that there's any question about it. If you look at in my industry, in talk radio, if you look at the people that are the purest to the message, we have the best ratings. But there's also, and that's largely because there's a whole section of the country that gets overlooked. These guys that you've mentioned are playing to New York City, Washington, D.C., and Los Angeles and San Francisco. They're playing to those coastal elites that think that they're witty and engaging and smart and all these other things. There's a lot of regular people, coast to coast, that depend on good information being given to them every day, that are raising families. The reason Trump won is because he attracted pro-union, church-going, tax-paying Democrats, people that are not into post-birth abortion, people that aren't into socialism, people that aren't into open borders. Those union workers, those factory workers throughout the Midwest, they want the wall. There's a lot of good people that are out there that are not reflected in the vision of Ilhan Omar or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or
I love the way you put the little Spanish on
I
it.
take
Yeah.
I take great pride in being the one in media that says her name the best. But here's the thing. Those people are so radical, and they have taken such a large portion of the voice out of the process, that there's a lot of people that they just feel like they're not in part of that vision. Trump's tapping into that. His pre-2020 speech is already saying, if you vote for Democrats, you're voting for socialism, post-birth abortion, and open borders. That's not what America wants.
On What's the Deal, we talk about it every week. What's the Deal is the place where the purple people hang out. The reds and the blues are on the edges. They're the zealots. Most of America is in the middle, some red, some blue, and that red and blue equals purple. Those are guys like Eric Ulrich, who understands the working person, who understands the blue-collar person, not the progressive person, not the person that wants to worry about cow farts, not the person who wants to chase 25,000 jobs out of New York City. And Kevin McCullough, my good friend, my longtime compadre and nationally syndicated radio host, contributor to Fox News. He's a regular on Outnumbered.
Yeah,
Eric is there talking about conservative ideals, about keeping America great, about making America even greater. And, you know, there aren't a lot of shows on television, guys, where we can talk about this stuff. What's the Deal is the place. You guys are welcome back here anytime. Kev, I want to thank you for coming down last minute.
Thank you, John.
Eric, I want to wish you the best.
Thank you.
If you're in New York City on Tuesday, go out and vote for common sense. Vote for the Republican, his whole life, Eric Ulrich, to end one-party rule. If you're in New York City or anywhere else in the country, look for Salem Radio and Kevin McCullough, because he'll be on there telling you what the real deal is, breaking it down. And what we do on What's the Deal is we talk about where the rubber meets the road. We talk to real people who'll give you the real deal. And we break down the age-old question, what's the deal? What's the deal with Public Advocate is Eric Ulrich. What's the deal with Talk Radio is Kevin McCullough. And What's the Deal? We'll be back right after this. Hey, welcome back. It's John Tobacco. We're at the Pitch Shift Conference in Miami. It's Blockchain Week right here in Miami, and tomorrow kicks off the North American Bitcoin Conference, one of the biggest conferences of the year, and that's why What's the Deal is here, because we're breaking down the news of what's the deal with blockchain, what's the deal with Bitcoin, what's the deal with crowdfunding. We take all the noise and sift it out, and we bring you the stuff that you need to know, educate you a little, make a little awareness. We're referring to the 2012 Jobs Act. And if you don't know, as part of that Jobs Act, the legislators made it a little easier for people historically who've been left out of private placements. You know, when you invest, you hear about these big IPOs, these people, your neighbor or your friend, they got in because they were some accredited investor and they got in early and then you got in late. The Jobs Act made it so that deals up to a certain amount, 25 million, 50 million, different thresholds, regular people like you can do your homework, you can educate yourself, and if you think it suits you, you can now invest at the same time the big institutions. So, and Emery, you came from that background, and the Jobs Act was really added velocity to a new way for companies and issuers to access capital. What other areas do you see right now that are ripe for crowdfunding and taking advantage of the Jobs Act?
Yeah, but crowdfunding had already started tapping into high growth opportunities such as fintech, overall tech. However, with the ICOs, people realized the potential. So since the ICO boom, the number of opportunities on crowdfunding platforms just increased tremendously, and we see that the most recent trends, which is determined really by the investors, is definitely still tech, such as AR, VR, fintech, anything about, let's say, drones, virtual reality. Also, interestingly, another industry that also Wall Street couldn't really get into is the cannabis industry. We all have seen these cannabis stocks, how they overperformed the industry.
And now you're just starting to see these big, huge, Fortune 500 names looking really closely at getting involved. So you guys have identified this area as a place where there are some great growth opportunities for initial stage investors.
So it's an industry that is leaving the hands of illegal people and going into the hands of a legal framework. And the industry is just about to create its own Coca-Cola, its own Marlboro, its own Walgreens.
There's point of sale technologies.
Definitely.
There are paraphernalia and accessory products, e-commerce opportunities there. And I think there's a huge opportunity for some company or some group of companies that figure out how to use their own cryptocurrency to get a little more favorable banking experience for themselves.
Definitely.
So we're not talking just about companies that make marijuana. We're talking about, like you said, the Walgreens. We're talking about the places where they sell it. You want to go to credible places where you know it's a brand name and you're getting legal, high quality product. Get past the stigma of they're talking about pot and think about the opportunity of years ago in America, there was something called abolition where there was no alcohol. And then right after that was over, these companies that you still see today, Budweiser, which is InBev, and Jack Daniels and Johnny Walker, these were companies that emerged then, and the market was so ripe that they were able to scale, and they had the bandwidth to go out and do it. And Emery, what I think you're trying to do is you're trying to find those growth companies that you can introduce to the crowdfunding world and give them the fuel for that fire to have the bandwidth and be able to scale these businesses and become the household name.
So we want individual investors to have the opportunity to be an early investor in the future Coca-Cola, in the future Walgreens of the cannabis business.
So we're at the Pitch Shift conference right here at the One Hotel in Miami. We're in Miami for Bitcoin Week, the North American Bitcoin Conference. We're with Emery OK, the CEO of RenGen Labs. We're going to take a quick break. You're watching What's the Deal on Newsmax TV. Lucky enough today to get a couple of minutes with Evelio Medina. Evelio, thank you for joining us on What's the Deal. And Evelio is the president CEO of the Brickell Chamber of Commerce, right down the road here in Miami.
Across the pond.
Right across the pond. And Evelio, I feel like Miami, South Florida, has started to become kind of an epicenter for crypto and blockchain enthusiasts. And one thing I try to always compound is Bitcoin and other currencies like it are use cases for the underlying technology,
which is
blockchain.
blockchain, right.
That's the global enterprise solution.
And that's basically, and it goes to the point that's going to affect everybody because it has traceability. So let's say, to make it palatable for our audience, you go and get a piece of rock in a mine in South Africa. Turn that into a little diamond. Well, from that moment, that piece of rock came out of that quarry or that mine, and put it in your wife's ring. You can trace that now. It's not Zirconian, you know where it came from. Now, that transit.
By the way, I'm 0 for 2 on wives.
Well, it's all right.
So it's a little
We
sensitive.
gotta take you to South America.
It's a little sensitive when you start talking about rocks on fingers because
I know.
I wish I could trace those rocks to those fingers right now. Joining me today is Eli Blatt. Eli, thanks for coming on What's the Deal and participating in the Pitch Shift. Your company, Bitfinance, is new innovation, harnessing all of these new emerging technologies around blockchain and crypto-centric ideas, and give our viewers the simple layman's rubber meets the road explanation. Hey, this is what Bitfinance can do for you.
Bitfinance lets you invest like a Rockefeller. Until now, the best alternative investments have been available only to the wealthy because of regulatory limits and really high minimum investment amounts. And at Bitfinance, you will find those investments available in more achievable minimums, and that will provide you access to whole classes of investments that you simply have never had access to before. And in that way, we are seeking to democratize access to these institutional-grade alternative assets.
These are the types of companies we're bringing to you, educate you, make you more aware of what's happening out there. These guys are harnessing new technologies and great growth opportunities and putting new products on the planet for those at home and those just like you to go out and get involved in the blockchain. I want to thank you for taking a few minutes with us. Best of luck to Bitfinance.
Bitfinance.com for more information.
Kevin Richards is with us. Kevin is the concierge for the Bermuda Business Development Authority. And Kevin, concierge has a hotel type thing, but you're really a concierge to the world, spreading the message that Bermuda is open for business, for fintech, for blockchain, for crypto, and you guys are trying to find issuers, you're trying to find users, you're trying to find use cases where your venue becomes a destination for the best of breed.
Yes,
right?
and thank you very much for having me on the program.
Of course.
Bermuda's implemented legislation to govern ICOs and digital asset businesses so that we can have regulation around the space.
Last year, you guys sponsored some legislation, the Digital Asset Business Act, and that's been passed within 5 months. And now you guys have opened the doors and said, "Hey, if you're a digital asset business, come on down. The price is right in Bermuda."
Exactly.
And what are you seeing coming to Bermuda as great new ideas, opportunities? What kind of people are coming to you right now?
I think the more traditional experienced investors are looking at Bermuda as a jurisdiction of choice because we've got this regulatory framework and really because of our history as a top tier international financial center.
And it seems like a lot of people out there are trying to get away from the U.S. jurisdiction because there's still no certainty with the rules. Are you guys seeing a lot of inflow from people who have great ideas and they're frustrated with the U.S.?
Yeah, we had a little over 50 companies that incorporated in Bermuda under the new fintech regime in 2018. And with the EU legislation coming on board in terms of substance, I think Bermuda is going to be very attractive right now because typically we have fewer companies with actual real presence and people in Bermuda. So the type of people that we've traditionally always attracted, I think, are the ones that are now launching STOs versus utility tokens that we saw in 2016-17. And the way this industry is heading is really going to fit what we've put in place. And as you kind of alluded to, the magic, I think, with Bermuda is that we're able to bring all of the key stakeholders to the table and really action something very quickly. So the magic that we're seeing now is we have a 40-year-old head of government, head of state, who is a technology expert, has a technology background. So the ability from a leadership perspective to really understand where financial services are heading, what the future is going to look like, and implement legislation to support that and to future-proof the island so that we are going to be attractive in the long term for this industry.
We got world-renowned judges and investors in the room that are listening to this stuff, and all the feedback has been fantastic.
Yeah, I think I just want to relay that Bermuda is open for business. We are a fintech-friendly jurisdiction that's trading on our reputation and our history of being a top-tier blue-chip jurisdiction for financial services. And I'm here to support anyone who's interested in doing business in Bermuda and helping connect you and your listeners and your viewers to the Bermuda environment, and we really are hoping to attract the top fintech companies of the world to our country.
And we'll be back right after this with more coverage on all crypto all the time from the Blockchain Pitch Shift Conference right here at the One Hotel in Miami. You're watching What's the Deal on Newsmax TV. Brian, thanks for joining us on What's the Deal.
Thank you so much for having me.
And your company, Gentera, is focused on regenerative medicine. Not really cryptocurrency, but you are using the blockchain technology to kind of track the umbilical cord from the date of birth, through its life.
How we want to incorporate the blockchain approach is, through our lab and in our manufacturing facility, we want to track that umbilical cord from the moment the mother donates it all the way through until the recipient patient gets it, or if it goes into the National Merit Donor Program, into that recipient as well.
I don't think people know at home, but some of the most important cells and platelets are in the umbilical cord.
So never have we, do you have as much stem cells as you do at birth. It kind of falls off the cliff from day 0 all the way through. And as we get older, that's why ideally we want to have those stem cells earlier on, because why? They're the most naive, they differentiate the most, giving us the best chance for regeneration.
So you hear a lot of times when people who are afflicted with some disease and they need a stem cell transplant, they need a stem cell match or a stem cell donor, that organic place where the mother and the child are connected in the umbilical cord, that's where the greatest exchange of these cells happen. Amazing new medical technology, and all this stuff is building off this great new innovation called the blockchain. Joining me now on What's the Deal is Hector Hernandez. Hector is with Dex Freight. So in these situations, I always try to put it in the simplest terms for our audience. We try to break it down to the nuts and bolts.
Sure.
So you guys are creating a platform for shipping and logistics where end users can meet, they can date, and then they can mate.
Yes.
Is that what
That's very, in simple words, that's what it is. So it's a business-to-business platform at the very beginning.
Yeah.
But it has the potential to reach end users also.
This is the real deal. And when I heard the Dex Freight story and saw that presentation, I'm even more impressed. You go to dexfreight.io to get a little more information and find out about all the great things Hector Hernandez and the team are doing. From season 1, you might remember we had on Ed Hanschul, and we talked about the team over at One Canto. One Canto is a place where if you want to trade and get the best price, and you got to open 5 accounts at all these different places and do KYC, AML, upload your photo, text your grandmother. Eddie.
Thanks for having me back, John.
Of course.
Huge changes since the last time we spoke at Blockchain Shift in October, I think it was. We're getting started with the broker-dealer registration process. Government shutdown has put us on a little bit of a hold with that, but we're looking at doing the stocks either through Interactive Brokers as an introducing broker or another method. And on the crypto side, we are going forward with our beta for our order routing as a service. So really testing out that best price algorithm of getting the best price no matter what exchange you're on or what have you, and really going from either A to B and utilizing a bridge currency to do that.
Got it. So just so our audience, a lot of our audience just learned about this stuff, just so they understand. Your smart order routing technology will go out there and ping all of these exchanges. Mm-hmm. So when someone comes to you with an order, they're not just stuck getting the price wherever they are.
Right.
You can get them to all of them and kind of get them almost the best price.
Yes.
And that's important because you don't realize it. Some people are trading cryptocurrencies and they think they're trading for no commission, but they're hammering you on the execution, which you don't realize, and they're hammering you on the exchange rate. And what you want to do is you want to get with companies like One Canto, where they're checking all the markets that have liquidity. They know what the depth of book is out there, and they know what the price is. We're going to keep you updated on One Canto and many of the other companies you saw here today and before. You're watching What's the Deal, the show that doesn't kneel.
What's the deal?
Behind all this great innovation and all this other stuff, when you make money, you got to pay your taxes. And if you got to pay your taxes, you got to have a damn good attorney. And joining me for a couple of minutes today is Maurice Burkow. Maurice, thank you very much for giving us a few minutes. All these crazy kids, last year they thought they were rich when Bitcoin was $20,000, now it's $4,000, they're back to broke practically.
What was happening with them is they didn't realize, and we would spend a lot of time on the phone with them, they didn't know they were smart, intelligent. They knew how to figure all these things out.
They didn't
But
know you were running the meter the whole time.
business. No, but they didn't realize they were running a business. They were going to run a business.
Yeah, he's running a fantastic company. You want advice on how to do your taxes, on how to structure your company. These are the guys you go to. Almost every expert I've brought on this show says 9 out of 10 deals, if they get off the ground, will fail. So listen to 10 stories before you invest in one. Kevin Goldstein joins us today from Key Global Advisors. Kev, thanks for giving us a few minutes on what's the deal.
Thanks, John.
And you're like me, you know, I feel like I'm an old Wall Street hand, you know, I've seen a lot of things, and I think we share some similarities, and a lot of this stuff isn't really new. But you've seen a lot, and at Key Global Advisors, you guys have made some strategic investments in places where you do see growth opportunities.
What I'm looking at is foundational businesses to enable experiences in this new evolving asset class that I know from my world of Wall Street and finance. So one example is BlockFi, and I've been working with the founder since the inception. And what is BlockFi enabling? They're enabling a collateral-based lending. So you and I, if we have Bitcoin, we can borrow against it. Their next product coming out shortly is going to be we can deposit the Bitcoin or Ether and get a interest rate on it. But what's important to me is we're not betting on which digital assets will be around.
Right.
Because that's the important thing for your listeners, John. It's like, I'm not telling you that Bitcoin's going to be around, Ether's going to be around. I'm telling you that there's a new digital asset class. And if you're going to invest in this space, invest in the companies that are going to enable this ecosystem to evolve, because Bitcoin may or may not be around in 2 years.
And we can't leave the Pitch Shift conference without bringing the creator, the founder, the CEO, the brains behind the operation, man who does all the legwork, the brain work. I just come in as the eye candy. You know what I'm saying? But Dan Vaiola's back with us. Dan, we had, you know, an array of different types of companies. I don't know how you do it, how you run the crypto blockchain practice at Sadis Goldberg. What's the end result? Was it a great day?
It was a wonderful conference, John. I think, you know, what I really enjoy about these types of events is that we get to see real companies with real solutions to inefficient company marketplaces.
Anything coming up that we need to know about?
So the Florida Blockchain Foundation is putting on a series of events, including the Blockchain Shift in November of this year. So we're going to do Blockchain Shift 2019. We just did Blockchain Shift 2018 in October. You were part of that. So we do have events coming up. You know, look at our website and stay posted.
When you get all big and mighty and you have the biggest conference around and CNBC and all these other places are calling you, you still going to care about your friend Johnny T?
Of course.
You're still going to care about Newsmax?
Of course.
Or you're going to kick us to the curb?
No, Johnny, you'll be right there with any success that I have, and thank you for helping out.
Dan Vaiola, Blockchain Shift, founder and the guy who runs the crypto blockchain practice at Sadis Goldberg. Thanks again for being with us, and you've seen him before. You'll see him again. I don't think you want to hear me talk anymore. So I'm going to say, have a great day. We'll see you next week on What's the Deal.